20. We'll come to order now, and please respond when I call your name for the roll call. Kelly Baker,
Present.
Susan Besser,
Present.
Jeff Carson,
Present.
Mike Hathaway,
Present.
Brian Laster,
Present.
Lisa Marquardt.
Present.
Mary Pierce is delayed. Ken Scalf
Present.
and Jim Roberts present. I'd like to entertain a motion now to approve Resolution 2020-228, a resolution declaring that the Historic Zoning Commission shall meet on November the 9th, 2020, and conduct its essential business by electronic means rather than being required to gather a quorum of the members physically present in the same location, because it is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Thank you, Lisa. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ken. Please respond then when I call your name. Kelly Baker,
Aye.
Susan Besser,
Aye.
Jeff Carson,
Aye.
Mike Hathaway,
Aye.
Brian Laster,
Aye.
Lisa Marquardt,
Aye.
Ken Scalf,
Aye.
and Jim Roberts. Aye. To prevent the spread of COVID-19 and to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the City of Franklin officials, staff, and citizens, the Historic Zoning Commission will restrict physical access in the meeting room to a small number of staff members due to the current limitation on public gatherings. Accommodations have been made to ensure that the public is still able to participate in the meeting. The public may participate in the following ways: watch the meeting on Franklin TV, watch the live stream through the City of Franklin Facebook and YouTube accounts. The public may call into the conference meeting at 312-626-6799, meeting ID 917-4713-5941, password 572017. Callers will be unmuted and given the opportunity to comment during the meeting at specific times. Limited viewing will be made available in the lobby of City Hall to watch the live video. The public may email comments to planningintake@franklintn.gov to be provided in full to the commission and included in the minutes, but not read aloud in their entirety during the meeting. Emailed comments will be accepted until noon on the day of the meeting. Share your official comment with the agenda item number specified in the comment section of the Facebook or YouTube live videos. Our item now is to approve the minutes, of October the 12th, 2020. Is there such a motion?
So moved. This is Susan.
Thank you, Susan. Is there a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Brian. Then please respond when I call your name. Kelly Baker,
Aye.
Susan Besser,
Aye.
Jeff Carson. Jeff Carson somewhere. You're muted, Jeff.
Aye.
Thank you. Mike Hathaway,
Aye.
Brian Laster,
Aye.
Lisa Marquardt,
Aye.
Ken Scalf,
Aye.
and Jim Roberts. Aye. Vote to place non-agenda items on the agenda. We have one request tonight for a non-agenda item. The non-agenda process by design is reserved for emergency instances. Non-agenda items shall be considered only upon the unanimous approval of all historic zone members. Ms. Rose will just talk about this item, and then we'll hear from the applicant.
Allow me to introduce you, and I'll turn it over to you in just a minute.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair Roberts.
Yes.
The applicant, or the citizen here today would like to request consideration of a non-agenda item I'd like for him to make the request, but I did want to mention that the non-agenda item process by design is intended for emergency instances. The non-agenda item shall be considered upon an unanimous approval from the commission. And if the commission does consider the item to be emergency in nature, it must consider the item unanimously, meaning all the members present must approve the item to be considered an emergency item. And in that case, the item will be added to the end of the slate of items on the agenda for consideration at tonight's meeting. Does anyone have any questions about that?
I do. This is Lisa.
Go ahead, Lisa.
So is the applicant wishing it to be considered an emergency item? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yes.
And he will explain the case, and the commission will decide whether or not the item is something that you want to consider in light of emergency nature or not.
Okay.
And then the item will be considered at the end of the agenda if the commission votes unanimously to do so based on consideration of emergency nature.
Okay, and he'll explain to us why it is believed that it should be emergency, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Fincher, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
I think that just to reiterate what Ms. Rose was saying, that only if the item meets the criteria, which is in our bylaws for emergency in nature. And so just keep that in mind when you're discussing and considering the item.
Would the
Mr.
applicant please introduce yourself and explain what we're here to hear tonight?
Hello, everyone. Well, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Neil Pies. I'm the pastor of my father's house. We are in the South Margin and 4th Avenue in the corner of a couple blocks from here. And well, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. And first, I want to apologize. The thing is, we got excited. We decided to paint the church. If you picture the corner, you know that our building is made from bricks, and it's an old church. And we decided to beautify our church, and we thought that it's kind of trendy to paint brick, and we decided to do that. We forgot completely about getting a certificate from the city of Franklin, and we got an order to stop the work. Of course, to reverse that is kind of impossible. We are a little bit 50% over the priming process, just painting with primer. So we consider that this is a situation that we have to solve. Of course, if we're getting closer to winter, if we postpone it, we're gonna have a church that is in pretty bad condition because we haven't finished what we started. So I just want to submit the request to see how the city can help me to solve it. We didn't request the permission. We didn't request the certificate. And we are kind of halfway of priming the walls of the building. So that's basically, if you have any questions, you can ask me. But that's basically the main point of our request.
Mr. Ferris, let me just make sure I understand. You're about, what, 50, 60% through with priming only the building?
Yes. Yeah. We started, that was Halloween or the October 31st. We started on Saturday morning all the way to 4 p.m. and we didn't finish it. So on November the 7th, we're supposed to finish the priming and also the color white.
Okay. So you're trying to get this done before winter sets in.
That's
That's the reason for the emergency.
exactly because
Okay. All right.
I understood that the next meeting might be in December, something like that, or
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions before we decide whether we want to include this as an emergency item at the end of our agenda? Does anybody else have a question? Hearing none, then I'll call your name and ask for you to vote whether this is not anything other than consider it at this stage, to consider it as an emergency item. Kelly Baker?
No.
Chair, can we have a motion
Oh, excuse me.
on to approve the item
You're right.
or
Yeah.
or whatever we need a motion?
Yep. We need a motion to approve this item or to place it on the agenda as an emergency item. Is there such a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve, to place this as an emergency item on tonight's agenda.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Thank you, Lisa.
Mr. Chair, I have some questions.
All right.
I'm glad that we have the opportunity to discuss. How does delaying this harm the building? I'm confused about that.
Go ahead, Mr. Paez.
okay. Tell me again the question.
You said that that it needed to be completed before winter time, implying that delaying until our next meeting could harm the building. I'm not familiar with brick or painting brick, so I don't understand that statement.
Well, the thing is, we have a stop order. If we go through the regular procedure, I would say it would take a long, not a long time, but I think we will get the approval if that's the case. I don't know when, and probably it's going to be too cold.
Okay. I'm just not familiar with leaving brick partially painted causing harm. So the other question I have, I guess, is probably to Amanda and Ms. Fincher, is that, to my understanding, the bylaws say that we would approve it if we believe that adding it to the agenda would help prevent unwanted damage. Now, it's, from what I can see, receiving unwanted damage, that's part of the problem. So I don't understand fully why adding this would help prevent unwanted damage.
I'm happy to comment on what the bylaws state, but I am not at liberty to make the case for the applicant.
Okay.
And I can follow up with any additional analysis on our bylaws if necessary.
Okay.
Are there any other questions then from the commissioners?
I have a question. This is Susan.
Thank you, Susan. Go ahead.
So the building has been primed or mostly primed, and our ordinance states that you're not supposed to paint brick that's not previously painted. And is it possible, I mean, what are we talking about here is, can this primer be removed to take it back to, to what it was? And is that something that we can do? Otherwise, I'm not sure that this is something we need to consider.
This is Ms. Rose. I can state that the Historic Zoning Commission must consider approval or denial of the action. And so Mr. Piaz here is asking that it be considered an emergency item for the reasons he stated, so that action can be considered this evening. If that action is not approved this evening, it will need to be approved at some point in time. To Ms. Besser's point, I'm not certain. I'm still doing research myself whether or not the primer can be removed. I know paint can be removed from historic brick. I am not sufficiently educated at this point about just primer alone. I would like to see if there's anyone else on the commission that might be able to speak to solely primer and not just paint that's been layered, to see if there is a possibility that it can be removed. But to reiterate, the action must be approved or denied by the commission at some point in time, whether it's this evening or at a future meeting.
But we're at the point to either decide whether we want to put it on the agenda as an emergency item or not. And that's all we need to talk about now. But whether we can remove it or not, that's for discussion when we do have the item officially on the agenda. So are there any other questions about the pertinence of putting this on the agenda as an emergency item? And I see Ms. Pierce has joined us. Okay, then let's vote, and please respond when I call your name. Again, this is simply to add this item as an emergency item on the end of the agenda. Kelly Baker,
Yes.
Susan Besser,
Yes.
Jeff Carson,
Yes.
Mike Hathaway,
Yes.
Brian Laster,
No.
Lisa Marquardt,
Yes.
Mary Pierce,
No.
Ken Scalf,
Nay.
Jim Roberts, yes. Well, the motion is denied as we did not have a unanimous vote. So this needs to just be discussed, I guess, at the next voting meeting as an official agenda item.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I know discussion has ended on this, but I'd like to see if we could extend an invitation to the applicant for the design review committee. And then we could maybe get more information by that time.
Well, let me just answer that. As I understand it, having talked to Amanda earlier this afternoon, we've got 15 items right now on the next design review. So that's going to be a little cumbersome to try to work that in. I think it can be a simple addition to the December voting meeting.
We can certainly add the item if
We
that's,
can add the item, but I think we got a full plate is what I'm trying to say to you. But if you want,
Mr. Chair, this
Yes.
is Mary Pierce. I would like to encourage us to add the item, even if we need to take a break in the middle of a long agenda. Thank you.
all right. Okay, anything else on this? All right,
Mr. Chair,
yes,
we need to go back and approve the minutes from last month.
thank you. We certainly do. I thought we did. We already did that.
Good.
Okay, we're ready for item 1 now. Consideration and recommendation request for proposed revision to the Huffines property PUD subdivision located at 1343 Huffines Ridge Drive, Gamble Design Collaborative applicant. And as soon as Ms. Rose returns, she will make her staff presentation. Okay.
my apologies for that. We are on item number 1.
Yeah, go ahead. It's you. You're
Yes.
up.
I apologize.
No.
Okay. The applicant is requesting a recommendation from the Historic Zoning Commission concerning a proposed revision to a previously approved subdivision at the Huffines property, which is located at 1343 Huffines Ridge Drive. The property is located within the Historic Preservation Overlay due to its association with the historic John Henry Carruthers house. The request is one that will be forwarded to the Franklin Municipal Planning Commission and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for its consideration. The recommendation request is requested because the alteration to the development plan is affecting the historic resource site setting. The development plan has been approved for the Huffines property, and as I mentioned, it includes the Carruthers house. The Carruthers house is a circa 1937 stone farmhouse that's listed on the National Register of Historic Places. This is an excellent example of a residence built by an African-American Tennessee farmer. It represents local adaptation of stock building plans using native materials. At the time of that development plan approval, the previous version of the zoning ordinance was in place. So the development plan was vested under that document. And within that document, the Historic Zoning Commission considered section 5.7 of the document pertaining to this protection of historic lands and structures. The purpose of that section was to protect freestanding historic lands and structures typically located outside of the historic districts from negative visual impacts associated with new developments occurring within their proximity. The standards apply to new development on lots containing or adjacent to National Register properties or eligible properties. And the standards require that either a landscape buffer or an integrated approach development treatment be included. The development that was approved includes a mix of uses, including a hotel, office space, residential, and retail components. And it also maintains existing trees within the hillside overlay. Because preservation and maintenance of the historic Carruthers house is of utmost importance, the property owner agreed to rezone the historic house and identified the property around it to be included into the historic preservation overlay as part of the existing development plan approval. The property owner also agreed to dedicate the land to the city of Franklin for the creation of a public park. While the new buildings are not proposed to be architecturally sensitive to the historic house, the applicant is proposing to lessen parking areas around the historic house, and interpretive signs are proposed to be installed to celebrate the history of the Carruthers property and the family. The stone walls are proposed to be restored and maintained where possible. And ultimately, because of that, the Historic Zoning Commission approved the preservation strategy as proposed and found it constituted a combination of the approaches outlined in section 5.7 of the zoning ordinance that was in place at the time, as was most appropriate for the site, given its topographical constraints and consistency with the land use plan document Envision Franklin. Because of the infrastructure issues involving a water utility district, however, the applicant is now seeking to alter the alignment of a secondary access that was approved originally on the site. This access, as approved, roughly aligned with the original driveway of the Carruthers house and connected to Huffines Ridge Drive. This issue will not allow for an improved full connection between the street and Huffines Ridge Drive at this time. So the applicant is proposing to alter the roadway alignment, which would result in the creation of a hammerhead or a T configuration, so it doesn't fully connect. This connection will be near the historic house. The applicant has worked with staff for a while now to outline several different options that would address this issue while maintaining sensitivity to the historic house and site and setting. While the staff is hopeful that an agreement can be made with a third party at some point in order to allow for the full connection, it finds that the proposal is the most respectful to the site as can be configured while maintaining the intent of the Historic Zoning Commission's previous approval and while also continuing to implement necessary important life safety and traffic functionality considerations. So with that, it's recommended that the commission approve a favorable recommendation or provide a favorable recommendation to the Franklin Municipal Planning Commission and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for the proposed revision to the Huffines property PUD subdivision with the following items. The applicant should utilize landscaping around the hammerhead in order to soften its appearance from the historic house and from Huffines Ridge Drive. Thank you.
Is the applicant comments on
Sure, thank you.
Thank you. Is that Greg Gamble somewhere?
Well, this is Jeff Rosiak on behalf of Greg Gamble.
Okay,
I know y'all are used to seeing Greg's face.
that's right.
Uh,
Unusual to see somebody else.
Well, thank you all for the time, and thank you, Amanda. I think Amanda did a great job of kind of summarizing where we are. Can I share my screen?
Yes, absolutely. Kelly will allow screen share.
Okay.
You should be able to now.
Okay. So again, I think Amanda did a great job of presenting. So I will be brief, but we are before you because, and I guess I should mention, I think I saw Evan Willamink online as well, representing a developer. So he's here to answer questions if necessary. But we are before you as really a bit of a last resort kind of a scenario. We started coordination with the utility districts some 20 months ago and had hoped to resolve the water line issue well before now, but we have been unable to do so. And so I'll briefly explain our development plan to you and then just be available to answer any questions. You can see here the approved master plan at kind of the center of the site, the Huffines Ridge site labeled here. And we've highlighted the infrastructure that is going through the site and connecting to the adjacent sites for context. And this is the approved development plan. I think it's important to note that we are not asking for any revisions to the entitlements approved as the development plan stands today. It's a 6-story apartment building with a parking deck, office building, and hotel. And of course, this development plan also established the 10-acre park that has been granted HPO as well. And we are still proposing all of the improvements to the John Carruthers house, and the development plan itself isn't changing. But as we move through the development plan process and into the site plan process, a couple of issues were discovered. The first being that the intersection of Eazale and our proposed connection through the site to Huffines and another approved connection to Carruthers Parkway, which is called South Star Drive, those were deemed to be too close together. So in our site plan, we proposed a revision that made that connection an emergency only connection, as you can see on the south side of our site, and instead sort of flip-flop the site so that the connection from Orium to Huffines was north of the building. As we moved to that solution, we discovered that the installation of a Mill Crofton water line and the elevation at which that water line was installed created a problem with the engineering and of Huffines Ridge Road, where we really couldn't make that connection and make the required K values, which are the speed over the crest of the hill that Huffines creates at this intersection. We couldn't meet engineering standards and not impact the water line. So we worked for a long time to try to realign the water line. It just became impossible. And so what we have before you today is this development plan revision that eliminates that connection and creates a hammerhead, a T intersection. We hope this may be a temporary condition, but we are presenting it as a development plan revision and in the event that it might be a permanent condition. we continue to work on this. We are still working on this, and we hope this isn't the end solution, but this is the proposed development plan revision that's before you. And again, one item I did want to point out is in the process of these several development plans that have come in from south to north, being Carruthers Crossing West, our site, and Orium. Orium Drive has become clearly a kind of a major connection. And so I think that's kind of reduced the emphasis and need of our connection to Huffines Ridge. So we think that makes this solution a little bit more palatable. So I just wanted to point out that kind of that context. And so that's what we are requesting you all to consider tonight, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And as I said, I think Evan is on the line if you have questions for the developer. Thank you.
I am. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. Are there any citizens who wish to comment on this item? Hearing none, then would someone make a motion, please?
Mr. Chair, this is Brian. I move we recommend the proposed revision of the Huffine property PUD with staff comments.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mary. Okay, comments.
Mr. Chair, I just want to voice my thoughts on this because I'm at this moment not sure how I'm going to vote on the motion, but I appreciate the problems that have been encountered in Gamble Design Collaborative's efforts to try to mitigate the issue and come up with something that is feasible with city staff. But concern is that this really reduces access to this historic resource, and it reduces the visibility and prominence that we had hoped for it. And so even though I appreciate the infrastructure considerations, part of me is very conflicted because it seems to be at the cost of the historic resource.
Thank you. Additional questions? Any additional comments?
Mr.
I
Chair,
would second. Go ahead, Brian.
you first, Susan.
I would.
Susan, you're muted.
I would second Kelly's concerns.
Okay, Brian.
My comment just has to do with sometimes places are pass-throughs and sometimes they're destinations. And there could be a positive benefit in that the way it's now designed, the John Henry Carruthers property becomes a destination rather than just something that's passed through.
Excellent comment. Any other comments? All right, we ready to vote then? Kelly Baker,
No.
Susan Besser,
No.
Jeff Carson,
Aye.
Mike Hathaway,
Aye.
Brian Laster,
Aye.
Lisa Marquardt,
Aye.
Mary Pierce,
Aye.
Ken Scalf,
Aye.
Jim Roberts, aye. Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you.
I'm going to go back.
Thank you.
I did. Thank you. I did not ask for any citizen comments on items not on the agenda. So now is the time for that. Are there any citizens that wish to be heard on items not included on our agenda this evening? Kelly, do you have any? Thank you. No one, no items. All right, the next one is consideration of the rear deck at 319 North Margin Street. Chris Jones, applicant. Staff presentation by Kelly Gibson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could please share my screen. Can everyone see my screen? Good.
Yes.
The applicant is requesting a certificate of appropriateness for the construction of a rear deck at 319 North Margin Street. The proposed deck will be composed of waterproof Trex material due to its location in the floodplain. Steps will connect the rear door to the deck area. The applicant appeared before the design review committee at its October 19th meeting to discuss the proposal, and some of the DRC members spoke favorably of the placement of pervious at-grade pavers with a landing and steps in place of the deck. The guidelines support the placement of porches or decks on rear or less visible elevations, but also recommend that lot coverage not exceed 35% in specified residential zoning districts, including OR, as measured by building footprint. The existing building coverage on the subject property is 42.6%, and the addition of the proposed rear deck would increase that coverage to 47.7%. As the existing lot coverage exceeds the coverage recommended by the guidelines, any deck addition would be higher than the recommendations for total lot coverage. Building codes require a form of rear egress with steps and a landing. Staff consulted with Building and Neighborhood Services staff and determined that the use of pavers would not be approved for a permit due to the property's location in the floodplain and the fact that it currently exceeds the required landscape surface area percentage. Due to these reasons, a deck or a landing with steps is the most viable option for the applicant. Building and Neighborhood Services staff has advised that a guardrail will be required and the deck must allow water to flow through or will be required to include vents. Additionally, Building and Neighborhood Services staff recommended that the deck be freestanding, so not attached to the structure, but secured to prevent flotation and give the appearance of being attached to the house. The proposed deck material, which is Trex material, meets the requirement for rot-resistant materials. The proposed plan presents the most viable option due to the floodplain limitations and code requirements for the property. It's recommended that the commission approved the proposed rear deck as follows. The required guardrail must be composed of a rot-resistant material, and the application must meet all the requirements of the Building and Neighborhood Services Department, and any changes must be returned to the commission for review and approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Would Mr. Hathaway is going to recuse himself from this item. Would the applicant like to comment on this?
I believe Ms. Gibson did a great job at summarizing that, but if you all have any questions, those pictures were the best overall, I guess, visual to see what the deck would look like as opposed to having a traditional deck that sat up at roughly 30 inches and had traditional handrails. So something a little bit more low profile since we are exceeding the current guidelines as far as square footage versus the lot. So if you guys have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Thank you. And for the commission's purposes, the photographs shown are more reflective of what's intended than the drawings, which were not revised. So
that's correct.
So I just want to make sure everybody understood that. Then let's have a motion so we can start discussion on this. Are there any citizens that wish to comment on this application, first of all? Hearing none, then I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair. It is recommended that the Historic Zoning Commission approve the proposed rear deck as follows. The required guardrail must be composed of not rot-resistant material. And anyway, that's my motion.
Thank you, Ms. Besser. Is there a second?
I'll second.
That Ken. Thank you, Ken. Then please respond when I call your name. Kelly Baker, or any discussion? Any discussion on this?
Yes,
Ms.
Jim, this is Mary. I would like to offer a amendment that the design of the deck come back to staff for approval.
Okay. Is there a second to that amendment by Ms. Pierce that the design of the deck come back to staff for approval?
This is Ken. I'll second.
Ken seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Then let's vote on the amendment. Please respond then when I call your name. Kelly Baker,
Aye.
Susan Besser,
Aye.
Jeff Carson,
Aye.
Mike Hathaway is recusing. Brian Laster,
Aye.
Lisa Marquardt,
Aye.
Mary Pierce,
Aye.
Ken Scalf,
Aye.
and Jim Roberts. Aye. Then we're back to the main motion. Any other discussion on the main motion as amended? Then please respond when I call your name. Kelly Baker,
Aye.
Susan Besser,
Aye.
Jeff Carson,
Aye.
Brian Laster,
Aye.
Lisa Marquardt,
Aye.
Mary Pierce,
Aye.
Ken Scalf,
Aye.
and Jim Roberts. Aye. Chris, thank you very much. We look forward to seeing this completed project. Thanks for working on this and saving this property.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for your time. Y'all have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. We appreciate it.
All right, the next item 3, consideration of alterations accessory at 419 Boyd Mill, Durden Architect, applicant. Kelly Gibson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could please share my screen again.
You can see it.
All right, can everyone see my screen? Okay.
Yes.
The applicant is requesting a certificate of appropriateness for alterations to the accessory structure at 419 Boyd Mill Avenue as follows. Roof material alteration on the garage accessory structure and the approved garage addition, the replacement of the garage doors, and the addition of an upper story window and pergola on the garage facade. The applicant appeared before the design review committee at its October 19th meeting. The applicant is requesting to add standing seam metal roofing to the garage accessory structure and the approved garage addition. The garage is modern and non-contributing to the historic district. The guidelines state that architectural details on accessory structures should complement, but not visually compete with, the character of the principal structure. Standing seam metal is an appropriate roof material for both the garage and the approved garage addition, as the roof material would allow the entire structure to appear more subordinate, and it does not historicize the building. The proposed alterations also include the replacement of the garage doors with wooden carriage style doors, the addition of an upper story window, and the addition of a pergola located on the facade above the garage doors. The material of the proposed pergola was not specified in the application documents. The proposed replacement garage doors are consistent with the guidelines, which state that garage doors should have similar proportions and material as those traditionally found within the historic district. The applicant is proposing a different window style to the one previously approved. The proposed window is consistent with the guidelines, which recommend that windows for infill structures should relate to the architectural style of the structure or those found on neighboring buildings. The proposed pergola does not occupy a significant amount of space on the building and will not be highly visible from the street. For these reasons, the proposed pergola is consistent with the recommendation that accessory structures be designed simply. It is recommended that the commission approve with conditions the proposed alteration as follows. The garage pergola should be composed of wood for consistency with the guidelines, and the application must meet all the requirements of building and neighborhood services, and any additional changes to the approved plans must be returned to staff or the commission for review and approval. Thank you.
Okay, would the applicant please comment? Welcome
Good
back,
evening.
Mr. Durden.
Hi, good to see you, everyone, again. Well, just I just want to say thank you for seeing this again. We had a good meeting last month, but when we took off the overhang and added that double hung window, the double hung window just looked too big on that blank facade of the garage. If we could see the existing design that was approved, can I do that, or how do you do that?
We can share it. That's
We're happy to pull that up.
Oh,
I can do that.
I can share it. One moment.
Thanks. But the idea was that when we took that off, Joellen and Chuck, their den and their house looks right into this, and they wanted to play the scale down a little bit and give it that window. Right now, there's a nice little wooden ornate window and vines and things. And so we were talking about putting a overhang on it. So during the design review committee, we wanted an overhang. And so everyone saw a pergola that we had a photograph of, and the landscape architect suggested a pergola. So it sounded like everyone wanted the pergola, but didn't want the overhang. So Joellen and Chuck just wanted the best for, the garage. They're putting a lot of time and a lot of design into this garden, and they want this to be world class. They want a great looking building, great looking entry into the garden. They have Day and Associates, landscape architects working on it. So they wanted it to start in their driveway. And so the pergola seemed like a good idea. And then they were out walking the other night. So we turned in the pergola, and then they were out walking the other night and saw a historic site. I think it was on 3rd and South Margin. And it had that same overhang. So now they're like, well, if the garage, they asked me why we couldn't put the overhang over the garage doors to protect the mahogany garage doors, and they thought that it looked better than the pergola. It wasn't so lacy and arbor-like. So now we're kind of back thinking, can we put, if you could imagine, go back to the pergola now, and if we could just put a standing seam on, the brackets, instead of that being a pergola, could we go to an overhang, like a standing seam metal on that? I know we didn't present it, but it was kind of after the fact. Could we see the picture on the corner of 3rd and South Margin?
Yeah, but we got sent.
You could kind of see when they saw this garage behind the house, they got excited, and they were like, that's kind of the entry that we want to. So then they brought this picture back to me, and I was like, well, we've already turned in the pergola. And so I knew it was going to be a conflict, but we've already applied for the permit. So we could work the details out with staff if we were allowed, if y'all thought it was a good idea, if we could go with an overhang like this without, not the curve or not the swoop or not the hips, but very simple. So it not being a historic garage, we were wondering if we could do something very similar to this, very similar to the pergola, but go with a standing seam metal. And then the window was just a little different proportion than the big double hung window that was there. And I think the standing seam that we were talking about, Kelly, was already approved from the previous, from the previous submittal, the roof was already approved. We were trying to get the cedar shingles, but in the design review meeting, no one really thought that was a good idea, so we didn't even propose it. So we're just leaving it as standing seam metal. I just wanted to clear that up about the standing seam metal roof.
Was that approved? Was that, correct me, was that approved, the standing seam metal, or was it?
Yes.
It was, one of the conditions for approval was that the applicant work with staff to choose an appropriate roofing material, be it standing seam metal or asphalt shingle.
Oh, okay.
So it was not directly approved, but the applicant could work with staff to select.
All right. So that's not part of what we're dealing with right now. What we're dealing with right now, as I understand it, is the pergola, the change in the garage doors, and the change in this window.
Correct.
Is that right?
That is correct. And the one change that you're seeing, the pergola, we'd like to see if we could put a standing seam metal roof on the pergola. It would look very similar, but with a metal roof.
Well, but I think we've got to deal with what we've been put before us tonight.
Okay.
And
if we could.
At this juncture. So let's kind of move on in the discussion here and get are there any citizens that wish to comment on this? Hearing none, then let's get a commission motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve with conditions the certificate of appropriateness for the proposed alterations.
Second, it's Jeff.
Yeah. All right. Discussion.
And I want to be clear, I'm making this motion based on what is presented to us in the staff report.
That's what I understood. Any comments?
Mr. Chair, would it be appropriate that we could offer an amended motion that instead of the pergola, there was a simple shed metal roof that went across the top that was brought to staff for approval? Or do we need to vote on?
I think we're going to need to vote on this, and then if Mr. Durden and the applicants want to modify that, then we can deal with that separately in a separate meeting.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to get Ms. Fincher's opinion on that. Could that motion be proposed for amendment by another commissioner to change the pergola to a standing seam as part of an amendment?
Not being familiar with the architectural significance, or how logistically how that works, is the pergola part of the original application?
It is part of this one. It's a part of this one.
Right, and so your
theme was part of the original.
The previous.
Well,
and the amendment is to change an aspect of the pergola?
To change the pergola to another type of awning, I'll call it, for simplicity purposes.
I believe you could amend by motion that since this is part of the same application.
Okay. And so it would be acceptable then to present it to staff for approval? Is that what you're?
Has staff weighed in on this? So you're changing the nature of the application?
Yes.
And staff has not been able to evaluate or provide a recommendation on that change. Is that correct, Ms. Rose?
That's correct.
We can provide a little bit of background. The application originally, as Mr. Durden was alluding to, included the overhang, and it was recommended that the overhang be removed from it, and that was what the commission approved. Now the applicant is requesting a pergola type structure in lieu of an overhang within tonight's application. And Ms. Pierce is asking if it's possible to amend the existing motion on the floor so that it's instead of a pergola, an overhang, like an awning type overhang, and that move forward.
We can do it if you're able to provide, Ms. Rose, if you're able to provide comment on that as far as how it meets the guidelines or if it meets the guidelines. If you can provide comment, I think that we can change you can make that motion to amend and change the application that way, as long as you're able to provide comment and the applicant is obviously in agreement.
Now, Ms. Gibson, would you like to do that, or are you happy for me to do that? I'm comfortable either way. I know it's your application.
Oh, well, sure. I can provide the.
I'm sorry. Yes, Miss. I didn't mean to single out.
That's okay. We're one and the same anymore.
So the half-story addition was approved a few months ago. I believe it was the September meeting, and that application submittal included the overhang that the applicant is requesting now. So not the pergola scene, but the overhang. A condition for approval for that set of plans was to remove the overhang because staff felt that it was not consistent with the guidelines recommendation that accessory structures be designed simply. So staff could not, at this point, recommend approval for the overhang since we've already provided the interpretation that it's not consistent with the guidelines.
I think the word simple is the key thing here. And that we talked about that at, I think, a couple of design reviews and then especially this last one. And we thought that the pergola would be a soffity type of structure, if you will, or an awning. And that's what, that's where we are tonight. So.
And I am happy to speak to any questions related to the images that Mr. Durden provided to Ms. Gibson related to the other project, but that's a different context. That is a colonial revival property, an infill structure in its entirety. It was reviewed with a different context in mind, and the structure of the subject property is not a colonial revival or even a craftsman. And so I believe that Ms. Gibson's correct in that we were seeking to find ways to help make the application for the half-story addition meet the guideline intent to be more simple in design by removing that element.
Am I allowed to speak at all right now? Or
I'll let you.
Thank you. Well, we have made from the original denied awning or overhang, we have simplified it. So the pergola, we're just talking about raising the standing seam just a little bit, so not as high as the other one we just showed you. So it has been very simplified. And from the street, I don't know if you could tell if it's a pergola or a metal roof. Like, I don't even know if you could see that from the street, that, you know, the slope would be lower and you might not even be able to see the metal. Like, but it would do the same thing that the pergola is doing, but it would provide a little more shelter.
All right, well, let's go back to Mary's. Started with an amendment, which I butted in and on it. So Mary, are you still want to offer that amendment that we allow staff to weigh in on a specific design for an awning, standing seam awning?
For a very simplified standing seam awning, the picture was provided of something much more high styled than I think the architect is describing. So just a very simple awning. I guess my argument would be, I don't think you would have found either one of these on a historic garage So since it has limited visibility to help the homeowner get what they want, when I don't think there's any negative impact. I don't think it does any more harm than the other. So yes, I would like to offer as an amendment that a simple metal awning that would come back to staff for approval be considered.
Okay, is there a second to that amendment?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to second that.
Brian? All right, discussion. I guess if something did come back to staff for approval, and if they didn't approve it, they could always come back to the commission in another meeting. So that's fine. Okay, is there any discussion on this amendment? Any other questions?
I have a comment.
All right.
I think this is so similar to what they brought before, and we asked them to change it. And it just bothers me that we're going back to that in the middle of historic zoning meeting. So I'm not going to be able to support it.
All right, thank you. Is there any other comments or questions?
And Mr. Chair, I appreciate Mrs. Besser's comments. Obviously, these homeowners love their historic home. And I think if we support them in what they want and it meets the guidelines, I'm for it.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? All right, let's vote on the amendment. Please respond when I call your name. Kelly Baker.
No.
Susan Besser.
No.
Jeff Carson.
Yes.
Mike Hathaway.
Yes.
Brian Laster.
Yes.
Lisa Marquardt.
Yes.
Mary Pierce.
Yes.
Ken Scalf.
Yes.
Jim Roberts, yes. All right, then let's, any other discussion on the motion, main motion as amended? Then let's vote on the main motion as amended. Kelly Baker.
Yes.
Susan Besser.
Yes.
Jeff Carson.
Yes.
Mike Hathaway.
Yes.
Brian Laster.
Yes.
Lisa Marquardt.
Yes.
Mary Pierce.
Yes.
Ken Scalf.
Yes.
Jim Roberts, yes. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Durden.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Y'all have a good night.
Okay, our next item is consideration of fencing at 902 West Main Street. Dan Apple.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could share my screen again, please.
Thank you, Ms. Gibson.
Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
The applicant is requesting a certificate of appropriateness for the construction of fencing at 902 West Main Street. The proposal consists of wooden plank fencing along the property line located on the south side of the parcel. Here. The fencing will begin at the rear corner of the existing porte cochere and is recessed 16 feet behind the plane of the primary facade of the dwelling. The proposed fencing measures
So I don't need a person.
in height and is composed of cedar. The proposed fencing style, which is wooden plank privacy fencing, is consistent with the guidelines, which recommend that fence materials be compatible with the surface materials of the building and to maintain the range of materials historically present in the district. The height of the fencing, 6 feet, is also consistent with the guidelines. The location of the fencing is not consistent with the guidelines, which recommend that wooden plank fences be recessed 20 feet from the plane of the residence's primary facade. The intent of the guidelines in this case is to prevent the placement of wooden plank fencing in primary yards and other areas readily visible from the street. The proposed fencing would begin in the side yard of the property behind the porte cochere and would extend into the rear yard. The fencing as proposed would be recessed from public view, and the location aligns well with the architectural features of the principal structure. So you can see the porte cochere here, and the fencing would extend it into the rear yard. It is recommended that the commission approve the proposed fencing as follows. The application must meet all the requirements of the Building and Neighborhood Services Department, and any changes must be returned to the commission for review and approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gibson. Mr. Dan Apple is with us tonight.
Yes.
Mr. Apple, would you like to make some comments on this application?
I believe Kelly presented it as discussed. I have nothing more to add, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any citizens who wish to comment on this application? Hearing none, then I take a motion from the commission.
I'll make a motion to approve a certificate of appropriateness for the proposed fencing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
I'll take Jeff. Thank you. Any discussion now on the fence? We're ready to vote. Okay, please respond when I call your name. Kelly Baker.
Aye.
Susan Besser.
Aye.
Jeff Carson.
Aye. Aye.
Mike Hathaway.
Aye.
Brian Laster.
Aye.
Lisa Marquardt.
Aye.
Mary Pierce.
Aye.
Ken Scalf.
Aye.
Jim Roberts. Aye. Thank you. That's a record. Thank you very much. Our next item, number 5, has been pulled for the evening for the work at 208 Lewisburg Avenue. That leaves us with item 6, consideration of new construction at 325 Fair Park Court, Lot 2, 906 Studio Architects applicant. Staff presentation by Amanda.
Yes, the applicant is requesting a certificate of appropriateness for the construction of a 2-story principal structure with an attached 1.5-story garage at Lot 2, which is 325 Fair Park Court. I'm going to share screen. I believe everyone can see that now. So just to orient everybody, what is on the screen are the existing conditions at the street. The first building is Lot 5, which is the building that is constructed that backs up to Fair Street. So if you're driving on to Fair Park Court, this will be at the end of the street on the right. The building in the middle of the screen here at the top is Lot 4. This building is constructed, it backs up to 96 West. So if you drive onto the street, it's at the end of the street and is on the left. This will actually be adjacent to the subject property being to the left of this property. This is the view of Lot 2, the subject property as viewed from the cul-de-sac. So if you're looking at this photograph here, Lot 4 is to the right off screen. Here you can see that. And then this is the view from 11th Avenue North and Fair Park Court, the intersection. So Fair Street is over here. 96 West is going to be off screen to your left. And Boyd Mill Avenue is actually behind you. Does anyone have any questions about where this is located? I think everyone's pretty clear about that. The applicant received a certificate of appropriateness for the scope of work at the January 14th, 2019 meeting. However, this certificate of appropriateness has expired. Certificates of appropriateness are valid for 1 calendar year. The applicant appeared before the design review committee to discuss the current proposal at its September 21st meeting. The Hensheyville Historic District consists primarily of single-story residential, or single-family rather, residential buildings ranging in construction from circa 1828, our oldest building in the district, to the 1950s, and consists of influences from Gothic Revival, Greek Revival, Queen Anne Italianate, Tudor Revival, Colonial Revival, and Craftsman, among others. It's a very architecturally diverse district. And buildings range from 1 to 2 stories, and historic garages and outbuildings are common. The guidelines recommend that new construction be designed to be compatible in massing, height, proportions, scale, size, and architectural features of adjacent buildings, and that new construction complement rather than detract from the character of the historic district. Compatibility is generally achieved by building within 10% above or below the average height of the buildings on the same block face on the same side of the street, and the height of infill buildings on newly created streets, such as Fair Park Court, should be compatible with the building heights of the nearest block face within the established historic district. Now I'm going to move ahead. Here is the location of the proposed construction. You can see the footprint. Here's the front elevation. The proposed scale at 2 stories is appropriate for the Hensheyville Historic District, which ranges between 1 to 2 stories in height. The massing of the proposal, however, is not entirely consistent with the context of the district. The residence is proposed to have 2 primary masses as viewed from the street. You have the main mass here, the main residential form, and then you have the front-loaded 2-bay garage. The guidelines recommend that in areas where historic garages are generally detached, new garages should appear to be detached. And attached garages should be designed in such a way that they are located at traditional locations behind the rear plane of the main form of the house or otherwise not visible from the street. The Hensheyville Historic District features more detached garages than attached garages, and most of the lots in Fair Park, however, are configured in such a way, as you can see here, that they're limited in their ability to accommodate a detached accessory structure very well. And because of the subject property being unable to achieve that well, and the property backing up to 96 West and not being adjacent to the historic structures in Fair Street, the massing relationship to the Hensheyville Historic District is less critical than that proposed on the infill construction lots located on the other side of the street, opposite block face, where I'm showing my cursor. The height of the proposed infill at 29 feet, 11.5 inches, may not be entirely consistent with the guidelines, as the guidelines state that the infill height compatibility would be generally achieved by building within a range of 10% above or below the average height on the street block face, but also within the general range of what you see within the established historic districts adjacent most block face. The heights range on the neighboring portion of Fair Street from approximately 24 feet to 30 feet. And the adjacent building on this block face, which is a cul-de-sac, so there's only one adjacent building, was approved at 32 feet, 8 inches. The subject property abuts to 96 West as mentioned and is not immediately adjacent to historic structures. So its relationship as far as height with the Hensheyville Historic District, while important, is less critical again than those lots located on the opposite block face, as they are adjacent most to the Fair Street historic homes. As for materials and architectural features, the proposed materials of the new construction are not listed, though it is it does appear that the materials are intended to be a brick foundation and a lap siding. Window and garage door specifications have not been provided. The proportion and rhythm of the window openings are consistent with the guidelines, which recommend the maintenance and rhythm and spacing of openings and doors, and for doors and windows of adjacent structures. And one note I'd like to make is in relation to the chimney. This is on the left elevation. This would be facing toward Fair Street. The left elevation chimney is not entirely consistent with that seen on historic equivalents. The chimney guidelines state that new chimneys should be compatible in height, size, and massing to existing chimneys on neighboring houses. The chimney as proposed is rather massive at the top, and the chimney approved for the adjacent infill building at Lot 4 here is located on the other side of the building. It has a rather tapered top, so it is a little bit more historically appropriate in profile. As for building coverage, the proposed building coverage is approximately 35%. I did want to note that there is a note here that says 38.8. This isn't entirely accurate, and I will explain why. In the coverage breakdown, which staff always evaluates, there was an accidental inclusion of this uncovered patio, which you see here. Uncovered areas don't count toward building coverage. I believe the intent is to have a pergola, which I will pull up here, which you can see the pergola here, and you can see it here. Pergolas can add mass. I don't believe the intent here is to add a significant amount or appearance of mass. As long as the pergola is not a hard cover, does not present a hard cover, then it does not count toward the lot coverage calculations as defined by the design guidelines or the zoning ordinance. So the coverage as calculated is about 35.2%, which is generally consistent with the guidelines, which recommend no more than 35%. So it is recommended that the Historic Zoning Commission approve with conditions the proposed new construction as follows. In accordance with the guidelines, the chimney shape must be altered to be compatible in size, height, and massing to existing chimneys on neighboring houses, and that chimney alteration must be approved by the preservation planner or the Historic Zoning Commission prior to issuance of the building permit. The applicant must utilize a smooth-faced wood or cementitious siding with a historically appropriate lath reveal, which would be between 4 and 5 inches for consistency with the guidelines. The roofing specifications must be approved by the preservation planner or the Historic Zoning Commission, as they are not defined here. I believe it's probably an asphalt shingle, but I will let the applicant comment to that, but either way, that must be approved by staff prior to issuance of a permit. The window specifications and the garage door specifications must be provided to staff in light of the guidelines prior to issuance of a building permit. And as a note, the rear patio must remain uncovered for consistency with the guidelines, and as such, the pergola may not feature a hard top or any surface that would impede its ability to allow water to penetrate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rose. The applicant. Thank you, Ms. Rose. Would the applicant wish to comment on this application? Do we have an applicant?
Mr. Hathaway, Mr. Daniel, are either of you available to speak to this?
Oh, sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. This is Mike Hathaway with 906 Studio Architects. Thank you guys for your time. As Ms. Rose mentioned, this was a previously approved application. I know we did a lot of work trying to get the height down as much as we could, lowering the crawl space and some other things. So we took that into account. We agree with staff comments relative definitely to the tapered chimney. It should have been tapered, and that was something that we missed, and glad to work with Ms. Rose on that design. The siding was intended to be cementitious siding at 5-inch exposure, so we're glad to do that, and then the specs for the roof would definitely be asphalt shingle. So would appreciate your approval and look forward to any questions.
Thank you. Are there any citizens which comment on this application? Hearing none, I'd like a motion from the commission.
I'll make a motion I move to approve with conditions a certificate of appropriateness for the proposed new construction based on staff analysis and recommendation dated November 9th, 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Marquardt. Is there a second?
I'll second, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Brian. Discussion. Mike Hathaway, one question on the patio. You're good with that pergola as shown, right?
That's correct. When we
Amanda's
first,
comments.
when we first submitted it, was covered, and then because of the coverage percentages that were too high, we took that off and made it a pergola. So yes, that's our intention.
Okay, thank you. Any other?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. Pierce.
I have more of a question for the applicant. Would it be possible for the dormers on the garage to be on the rear as opposed to on the front?
I think so. I think we were trying to reduce the impact of that roof on the front of the garage. So part of that was the dormer, as well as getting light into that space above the garage. But some of it had to do with the massing, and didn't want to have a larger roof. But I don't see why that couldn't be an option if that was a concern.
I was just wondering if that would make it, and I'd appreciate your comments on it, Mike. Is it too much roof, or would it simplify it and make it just read more as a, simple garage?
Mm-hmm.
Given that the house has several roof changes.
The only concern, as I'm looking at the rear, that perspective, upper left-hand corner, if we put dormers back there, we're going to be in conflict with that secondary roof that's over the back piece there.
Okay.
So that's the only thing that would mess that up.
Well, I'm not, because of where it's located, I can let go of that idea.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I had a comment. This is Susan.
Thank you, Susan.
I thought that we had talked about the massing of that garage being a bit, having it be less, and then I don't think that's happened, and that concerns me a bit.
Well, this Susan was exactly what we had submitted before that got approved. I think you may be thinking about lot 6, which we are now in the process of looking at that and reducing that massing.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good.
You bet.
Good question. Any other comments or questions? We ready to vote then? All right. Respond when I call your name. Kelly Baker.
Aye.
Susan Besser.
Aye.
Jeff Carson.
Aye.
Mike Hathaway is recusing, obviously. Brian Laster.
Aye.
Lisa Marquardt.
Aye.
Mary Pierce.
Aye.
Ken Scalf.
Aye.
And Jim Roberts. Aye. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Are there any other items for discussion tonight? Amanda, do you have any other items?
I do not have any other items. I did want to mention that we do have a pretty hefty design review committee agenda moving forward. I will work very hard to get a digital packet to you just as quickly as possible. We are anticipating in excess of a dozen items. I will work my very best to organize them in a way that will allow us to provide the greatest amount of information to everybody in the most succinct way possible. And I appreciate
Ms. Chair, we ask
everyone on that.
Wait a minute. Okay, Barry, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, can we ask to have, if it's going to be that long of agenda, to build in a little 5-minute break or something in the middle?
Oh, certainly. I can certainly do that.
I'm just going to state for not the official record, but I'm just going to state that I will be packing snacks and snacking during that meeting for energy.
And as I was saying, I really do appreciate all that you continue to do as a committee and a commission. This is very important work, as you all know. I don't have to tell you that, but it's very long and it's important. And I love in a lot of ways how the silver lining of this epidemic has allowed pandemic has allowed folks to be able to see more of what our city commissions have been doing, the hard work that they provide at a volunteer level to all the citizens here in Franklin. And you guys are rock stars continually. So thank you for all that you continue to do. We really appreciate you. We love working with you as staff, and I can't thank you enough.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chair, so moved.
Thank you, Brian. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ken. All right, please respond. Kelly Baker,
Aye.
Susan Besser,
Aye.
Jeff Carson, Mike Hathaway,
Aye.
Brian Laster,
Aye.
Lisa Marquardt,
Aye.
Mary Pierce,
Aye.
Ken Scow,
Aye.
and Jim Roberts. Aye. Thank you all very much. We're done.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thank you, Amanda, for those kind words. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Lisa.
Night. Bye.